Yo! Video games.
What up, dudes? Matt here from YoVideogames with a very non-traditional, non-video game related video that I'd like to talk about today. Why am I doing this? Well, frankly, it's just something I want to talk about, and I think it's something you guys might want to talk about or hear about too. So, getting right down to it, I want to talk about Studio Ghibli and Hayao Miyazaki and how we finally, after months and months of me wondering what his next film was going to be, it's finally revealed. Now, I just want to get one thing off my chest, and that is, for months I was beating down this wall, or beating this horse, that everyone kept thinking Miyazaki's last film was going to be an adaptation of Boro the Caterpillar. Boro the Caterpillar is a short film which is going to be shown at the Ghibli Museum, and it is the first film that Miyazaki's ever done that's all CG animated, so it's like his attempt at like working with computers for the first time. And erroneously, I don't know how it happened, but not every, to be frank, but most news outlets were reporting that when Miyazaki said he wanted to make another film, everyone thought, oh, he's adapting Boy the Caterpillar to a movie. And I kept thinking in my head, like, am I crazy? Because I watched the documentary in which they talked about the making of Boy the Caterpillar, and at the end of it, Miyazaki came in to his friend and producer Toshio Suzuki, and he said, I have an outline for a new film I want to do. I want to do a new movie. And they intentionally blurred the title of his outline draft that he put on the desk in front of Suzuki. So it was like obviously like this big mystery, and they never ever implied that he wanted to make Boro the Caterpillar into his next movie. So I don't know where it all came from, but man, you guys all got it wrong. I mean, it was not ever going to be Boy the Caterpillar. There were so many reasons why that wasn't going to be it. So, and everyone just seemed to pick up on that in a comment he made about he thought maybe the short was too, well, short of a story to tell the full thing for it, but whatever. Moving on. So the movie he is going to make is going to be based off a very famous Japanese novel called How Do You Live? I do not know how to correctly say the Japanese title, but you know, you can look it up. So How Do You Live is an interesting story. It was written, or at least published, in 1937. So that's pre-war World War II Japan. But from the comments from Miyazaki, it sounds like it's not going to be an adaptation of the book, but rather the book will be an important part of the main protagonists in this film. It almost kind of sounds like, perhaps in a meta sort of way, the protagonist will use the book within his film as a sort of guiding light throughout his life. So what does that exactly mean? Well, judging back a little further, just before he finally came out and said what the name of his movie was going to be, he had made a comment that Suzuki passed along to the media that he wanted the film to be a goodbye, farewell to his grandson, that even though he may be leaving, you know, this world soon, that he would like to leave, you know, a nice message or a nice film for his grandson to remember him by, and leave it like a final message in it. Sounds a little, kind of like, a little morbid, but whatever, it's Miyazaki. He'll be 80, 81 by the time this film is done, and he is a heavy smoker. But, so it starts to make sense. So what is How Do You Live exactly? It's about basically a 15-year-old boy who, upon the time of release, his grandson will be about 11 or 12, so it actually kind of fits sort of timeline-wise where his grandson will be when the movie comes out. And he goes to live with his uncle, and his uncle's a college graduate or like a professor or something, which is kind of unique at that time, 1937. And he basically learns about society and the human condition, and basically how to be a better person, even when, you know, life kind of like presses you down. And it, you know, from what I've understood and researched, it's got sort of political themes that sort of lean towards Marxism as far as economy, which makes total sense considering Miyazaki was always kind of like an avowed like Marxist / communist. If you look at his early works, you can actually totally see this. If you ever watched an anime series called Future Boy Conan, which was made in the mid to late 70s, and Miyazaki directed every single episode of that anime. It's really good. It's a 13-hour Miyazaki film, 26 episodes total. You can totally see where he really values the idea of everyone has like a specific place and job and role in a society where like really nobody's above anyone else. So it's all sort of very idealistic. So I don't know how much that'll really be touched upon in the film. Probably not a lot. It sounds more like, from what I understand, the book is more kind of about dealing with bullies and standing up and basically other things such as class and possibly even sort of rank and racism and all that. And basically how even if the world gets chaotic and crazy around you, that you still hold on to, you know, your core beliefs, and you still find ways to be a better person, and kind of like you are, be the person you want society to be, or how should it, there's a saying that goes along with this, be the change you want to see. So that's kind of what it is. And this actually strikes me kind of interesting, because as a person who has met and actually briefly talked with Hayao Miyazaki himself, this is very much in line with what, you know, we talked about, which is about sort of values and corruption and how that affects you as you age. And according to Miyazaki, he's kind of more of a, from what he told me, he kind of believes more in the sort of blank slate approach, where, you know, everyone starts sort of with a clean slate, more or less, but if you don't, you know, learn the value and manners to both, you know, around the society and around nature around you, then you eventually become corrupt. So it's kind of like he's on one hand, he is of the mindset of you're born a blank slate, but he also has the mindset that if you just leave someone to their own devices, they'll naturally, sort of like entropy, they will naturally be corrupted over time unless they're taught proper, you know, manners and respect for other humans and for the world around you and nature and all that. So that's exactly what he told me. So that kind of strikes me as a chord with this movie, where I think he's, part of the message he's leaving his grandson is about that no matter how screwed up the world around you will get, no matter how people may act, you know, don't ever lose sight of, you know, what's right, you know, what's you know, what is the good, you know, what's the right thing to do, what is the, you know, what's the humanitarian thing to do to others around you. And so that speaks on a kind of like deeper fundamental level, obviously than a lot more than all the you know, the feel good, you know, schlock we come out with in Western media, which is all highly driven by merchandise and sales and ticket sales. And this is a film that, obviously being his last, will have no kind of strings attached. I mean, it's going to cost money to make, but at the same time, this is going to be a film where there's not really going to be any merchandise for it, more than likely. And it's kind of interesting because it also reminds me of a quote from Walt Disney, who one time came home and was kind of like frustrated with his wife because he'd just gone to the movies. And I believe it was his wife, maybe it was a friend, colleague, I may be getting the story mixed up with who he was talking to, but that's not important. The point is, Walt Disney came home one day, and he saw a movie, and he really loved the movie, but it frustrated him. And the movie was To Kill a Mockingbird, and if you know anything about To Kill a Mockingbird, you know how much of a great story that is, how much of an important story that is about society, about racism and all that. And, you know, the person asked, why does this make you upset? And he's like, because this is the kind of movie I wish I could be making. But at that point in time, Walt Disney had already kind of fucked himself into becoming a giant conglomerate in feel-good movies. And he knew he'd never be able to get away with making To Kill a Mockingbird. And, you know, he's kind of right. And it's kind of sad. I mean, yeah, sure, Disney makes live-action movies, and they've made plenty of adult films under different labels and stuff like that, but you could never, ever, at any point in history in America, have made To Kill a Mockingbird animated and then released it and have it be anywhere successful. It would have just been a total bomb and meltdown. But in Japan, you don't actually have to worry about that, because, you know, you look at the best-selling movies in Japan, especially the animated ones, you've got, I mean, obviously Frozen's a big deal over there too. God knows why. I don't know what the fuck the world sees in that film. But you look at some of their highest grossing animated films, like Your Name, which is cute and fluffy, but not really deep or philosophical, but it's nice. It's the kind of film that would never be made in America, would never succeed in America unless, you know, you put songs in it and you put a merchandisable, annoying-ass sidekick, fluffy, cute character that you could sell a million stuffed animals of. And I'm not saying Ghibli's necessarily free of merchandise, because obviously they've made their empire on Totoro stuffed animals. But you know, there you go. And then their other big films are Spirited Away, which is a little bit merchandisable, and then behind that you have Princess Mononoke, which is not that merchandisable, and it's a violent film. But it's a very deep film, and it has a lot of good messages. And you know, you can get away with making a film called How Do You Live in Japan. That Miyazaki can do that, even though it is his last hurrah, and probably just kind of let him do whatever he wants. But it's definitely the kind of film that could really only exist coming from Japan, and in other countries maybe too, maybe like France and maybe even Korea. Like, you know, you might be able to get away with an animated film like that over there, but no animation studio over here is going to touch a subject matter like this. It also kind of strikes me in a weird sort of way. It reminds me of Whisper of the Heart, which is a really good film that Miyazaki wrote but did not direct. There's a whole controversy there if you want to go digging into that. And it kind of reminds me almost a little bit of, sort of films like It's a Wonderful Life. And of course, To Kill a Mockingbird as well. Really, really good, and when I say philosophical, I don't mean like, what is existence? What is the meaning of existence? Not like Xenogears and Evangelion horse shit. I mean like actual, real, honest to God, like, what is, the human condition? What is the proper thing to do? How should we live our lives? And Miyazaki, through all of his films, can be boiled down into a single fucking bit of dialogue from Princess Mononoke, and that is, the world is cursed, but we must find ways to live. Or the world is cursed, but we still find reasons to live. That is Miyazaki in one sentence right there. And I think this film is going to encapsulate that. Maybe instead of sort of when it said in Mononoke, it said from a leper who's kind of nearing the end. But in this film, instead of being sort of like a sort of dour, like, sigh, it's more like, look, you're going to see a lot of messed up things in your life, but you can't let that stop you from living. So it's going to be an important message, and it's probably going to, it's going to hopefully resonate with some of the youth of Japan. It's obviously being made for Miyazaki's grandson, who's approaching his teenage years. But again, it's going to be such a different type of film for a teenage boy versus what usually constitutes teenage boy stuff in Japan, and I don't really think I need to go into detail of what that usually encapsulates. But again, we won't. You all know what I'm talking about. So that being said, the movie's going to come out either in 2020 or 2021. It's probably going to miss the Japanese Olympics, which is what Miyazaki was hoping for when he, in the documentary that came out a little while back, when he proposed it to Suzuki. No big deal, really, honestly. I don't even know why. I don't understand why people hold such a big thing for the Olympics. Like, there's a bunch of things in Japan that people are scrambling to finish in time for the Olympics, and I'm just sitting there going like, man, who cares? Like, I'm more excited about Nintendo Land opening in 2020 than the 2020 Tokyo Olympics. Like, I'm more excited about the Ghibli Park that they're opening, which, when I say Ghibli Park, don't get too excited. It's probably not a theme park. It's more like, it's going to probably be like an actual park with like a nature center. And Totoro's house is already there and built, but there'll probably be like maybe a cafe, maybe a gift shop, maybe, but it's probably going to be like a nature center trail, which to me sounds awesome. Like, I would love to go to like a park in Japan and visit it, and then go on like a nature trail hike, and then there's little Ghibli like carved wooden carved signs of characters or things like that. That would be awesome. I would love that. That'd be fantastic, but I don't know if just don't expect any rides. It's not going to be a theme park. But that being said, super stoked for the film. And I mean, honestly, like, there's a funny meme that goes around the internet every so often that says, you're too young or born too late to sail the seas, born too early to sail the stars. But I'm going to add to that. And my ending to that is, but I was born at just the right time to witness Studio Ghibli in its almost the entirety of its whole existence. And that is something I will actually treasure as a human being, is that I was able to live and see, all of the releases of the Studio Ghibli films when they were at least somewhat new or brand new or whatever. I was there when these films were being made, and you know what? That to me is something I will always be very glad and thankful for, as a human being able to be around at the time of these films and not as, you know, some forgotten novelty. So, yeah. Miyazaki's next film is How Do You Live? It's not Borrow the Caterpillar. It's going to probably be a fantastic film. It's going to not win a single Oscar because that's just how the Oscars go. But honestly, if you know how that goes, you shouldn't even care. It's not even worth getting upset over anymore. So I'm super excited for it, and I wish, much like Walt Disney, you know, I wish Disney and Pixar, and they do good work, don't get me wrong. Pixar has done some fantastic films, but this is definitely one of those films I wish they could make rather than what they have to make. So let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you on the comments. Later, dudes!